Hey guys, let's work out a sample problem involving ratios with fractions and unit rates, which is something that you've learned previously. So let's take a look at this problem. If you have your ready textbook, it's on page 33, and if not, I have a link to a PDF of it in your Canvas as well. And here's what the question says. Grace weaves a rug that is 1/3 of a yard wide and 2 yards long. And she wants to weave a rug that uses the same design but is 1 yard wide. So how long will that rug be? Here's what I want you to do. Put me on pause and pull out all the data for the first step of our 4-step problem solving system, right? What's the question about? What's it asking you to find? And what's the relevant data you need to pull out of it? So put me on pause, write that down, and afterwards let's figure out what you did. Okay, welcome back. Now, we know that it's a question about rug making, weaving, right? Now this particular rug actually is Navajo in pattern. And Navajo weaving is something that's been done for a very long time, and they still do it the same way. So she has a rug already, and she wants to make a bigger rug, but it's in the same proportion. That's what it's asking us to find. So what's the data that we need? Well, we need the original proportion, which is 1/3 wide and 2 yards long. Right, that's the proportion of the original, and part of the proportion of the new one. It's 1 yard wide. So we're looking for how long the rug will be. So I think it's safe to say that it's asking us for an answer in terms of length, because we're given the width, so we need the length, and the length is going to be in terms of yards. So step 2, put me on pause again, and this time come up with a visual way to represent what it is you're trying to find, and think about what tool you need out of your toolbox in order to solve it. So put me on pause again and see what you come up with. All right, welcome back. Now, if you did what I did, you said, okay, if the original is 1/3 of a yard wide, if we double that, if we make it 2/3 of a yard wide, then it's twice as wide. It's got to be twice as long as well. So if it was 1/3 by 2 yards, then if you double the base to 2/3 of a yard, then the length has to increase to 4 yards. And as you can see, that's 4 times as much fabric. It's 4 times as big, but it's still in the same proportion. So then you can say, okay, now if we're going to 3 times as wide, that's where we want to be. We're going from 1/3 of a yard to 1 yard, so it's 1/3 plus 1/3 plus 1/3. So we're going 3 times as wide as the original. Well then, in proportion, it's got to be 3 times as long as the original. So then that would be 2 plus 2 plus 2, and that gives us 6 yards. So that gives us a scale factor, right? Because now we have a unit rate. We have a width of 1 to every length of 6. So that's a 6-to-1 ratio, because 2 to 1/3, or 4 to 2/3, or 6-to-1 all reduces down to the same thing. So let's think about that. Several different ways we could solve this. So put me on pause, figure out the best way that works for you, and when we come back, I'll show you a couple different ways. Okay, welcome back. All right, you're looking down at my desk here. So let's figure out a couple different ways to do it. One way is the way we estimated it, by using a double number line. If we had a number line and another number line, and we know that our first number line, let's say this is our width and this is our length. Both number lines start at 0. So if our width is 1/3, then our length is 2. So we know that every time this distance goes up by 1/3, this distance will go up by 2. So we go from 1/3 to 2/3, and then from 2 to 4. And then from 2/3 to 3/3, or 1. And then from 4 to 6. So that's one way to do it, and that gives you your answer of 6 to 1. Another way is to use a t-chart. And a t-chart is similar to that. It looks like this, and you put your width on one side and your length on the other side. We know that your width is 1/3 and your length is 2. So now we have to figure out, what do we have to do to 1/3 to get to 2? How many 1/3s are there in 2? Well, we can work that out visually, right? There's 2, and there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 thirds in 2. So that means you take 1/3 and you can multiply that by 6 to get to 2. So 1/3 times 6 is 2. And we want to go with 1, because we're looking for a width of 1 yard. Well, if we multiply that by the same thing, 1 times 6 is 6. And that t-chart shows us that for a width of 1, you have a length of 6. So a different way of showing the same thing both ways. Now, the other way we can do this is by using equivalent fractions. And we can say, well, if we have a length of 2 and a width of 1/3, that's like saying if we have a width of 1, what is our length? And we can do that by finding equivalent ratios. And okay, we say 1/3 times what gets us to 1. So we're looking for common denominators. And 1/3 times 3 gives us 1, right? Because we know that a number times its reciprocal gives us 1. We know that. So if we have 1/3, multiply by 3, that gives us 1. So we have 2, we multiply that by 3, and that gives us 6. So that gives us a solution of 6 over 1, or 6. Now, because we're looking for a denominator of 1, we can also say that's a unit rate. And unit rates work out really well, because then all you have to do is divide the two numbers, 2 and 1/3. Now remember, this is nothing but a division problem. So if you divide 2 by 1/3, you find out how many yards per 1. So don't let this throw you off, the fact that this is a compound fraction. That's just a number divided by another number. So think of this as your division line. So 2 divided by 1/3, which looks like 2 divided by 1/3. And you know how to divide two numbers together if one is a fraction. You just have to make both of them fractions. So then we have 2 over 1 divided by 1 over 3. And we know that to divide by a fraction, you multiply by its reciprocal, right? Back in 6th grade, you called this keep, change, flip, but we're going to use mathematical language. So we're multiplying by the reciprocal. And 2 times 3 is 6. 1 times 1 is 1. 6 over 1 equals 6. so that our unit rate is 6 per 1. So that's like saying we have 2 yards and a third of a yard is equal to 6 yards and 1 yard. All right, class, I think that's a fairly good introduction as to what we'll be getting into the next couple of weeks. We'll be covering more examples in class, of course, so if you have any questions, don't hesitate to let me know. I'll see you soon.